Good morning and welcome to Code to Comply, delivering continuous compliance and accreditation at high velocity using infrastructure as code. My name is Glenn Hardy, I'm with Viewdeck Consulting, and I'll be introducing today's webinar. In today's presentation, we will illustrate how DevOps can provide real, tangible benefits in compliance, accreditation, and continuous service delivery. We will examine how, by using tools such as Chef Compliance with the Skyscape Platform, you can achieve velocity in compliance and agility in delivery. We will demonstrate how to not just implement compliance, but how to know that it has happened. And finally, we will identify how to create change agility and velocity and reduce the cost of transformation. This is the second of two webinars focused on the use of infrastructure as code to deliver real value and tangible, accelerated business, ICT, and service improvements, all through the adoption of DevOps and secure cloud platforms. Let me introduce today's webinar team. We have Sarah Richards, Seth Thomas, and Charles Richards from Chef. Sarah is the EMEA Operations Manager, Seth the Global Partner Evangelist, and Charles is the EMEA Partner Director. From Viewdeck, we have our CTO, Gary Seymour, and of course myself, Glenn Hardy.
Good morning. Just trying to get this next slide up. Can you hit the next slide for me?
And now to today's subject, DevOps, a tool for transformation. DevOps is about automation. It's about codifying your infrastructure. It's about agility in deployment, and it's about getting out of the business of building IT infrastructure. DevOps means faster delivery, service agility, and you having control. It allows you to become supplier and technology agnostic, removing those traditional barriers to rapid deployment and delivery. Before I pass over to Gary, I just recognise the fact that we've got a slight technical problem on the slide front, so if you can bear with us for just a second or two longer. Can I remind you that you can ask questions at any stage through the presentation. You'll see a question panel on your screen. At the end of the formal presentation, we'll do our best as a team to answer any of the questions that you have raised. Are we catching up with the slides, team?
No.
No, okay. Just bear with us for one more minute, please. We are trying that tried and proven method of technology to log out and log back in again to try and restart the slide show. So please bear with us once again. So many apologies for that, and thanks to the technical assistance from all over the planet. Really, it's over to you, Gary, to take us into the meat of the day. Thank you.
So we're just going to, for those of you who are new to this space, we are going to just do a very, very 30-second overview. There's a few key products and services that are going to be the heart of the demonstration today. We have, in the first demonstration, the first webinar, covered Chef and what is Skyscape. For those of you who are in the government ICT delivery space, I'm sure you'll have heard of Skyscape. It's a secure hosting, cloud-hosted platform designed to support official sensitive delivery of services for government. It's probably the only pay-as-you-go, turn up and use type service out of there. The Chef platform, I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to just give us a very, very quick overview of the Chef solution, and over to you, Sarah.
Thanks. The Chef product set allows you to describe in code how your IT is configured, and then use that code to automatically build or recreate those environments. The product suite, as depicted here, is made up of a number of components. Chef DK and Server provide an easy way to describe the elements that make up your entire platform, irrespective of complexity. Chef Delivery provides the automation pipeline to control the entire process, encompassing security and compliance checks, ensuring that these critical elements are not an afterthought, but a fully baked-in part of deploying new and updated applications and infrastructure together. The areas we will focus on today, and Seth will demo later, cover Chef Analytics, which provides you with insights, a visual view of all the changes happening in real time, allowing you to be alerted to anything unexpected, and Compliance, the ability to specify your regulatory or internal rules in code, which then allow you to automatically validate and correct any discrepancies from this original specification to ensure security and compliance are maintained at all times, right from the start of your delivery lifecycle, rather than, as all too often, an afterthought.
Thank you, Sarah. So really now, that's the quick overview, and clearly if there's any more that you need, then please do ask. We're going to jump to the actual meat of today's presentation and get down to this webinar today, Code to Comply, which is all around how do you create an environment that can give you that continuous compliance, using infrastructure as a code to deliver what we like to call accreditation at velocity. As you know, compliance accreditation is still needed by just about every HMG service out of there, and the desire and drive from the business has never failed. We continue to see the need to transform the existing legacy services, as well as the adoption of new frameworks, which are applying even more stringent compliance and audit requirements on top of the already quite fast and demanding pace of change. Compliance at velocity is the idea of using infrastructure as a code to be able to specify compliance-related requirements in a way that can be automatically tested. Automation then increases the velocity, enabling us then to consistently apply the same regulatory requirements in large-scale environments. By doing that, we can achieve the scale and the confidence and the assurance quickly. We're going to look at the number of the Chef products and how we think they can work inside platforms like the Skyscape platform to help deliver that scale and assurance and get that confidence that not only is the build correct, but then the compliance and the assurance is correct. We're going to look at the Chef compliance product and how you can use it to deliver scale and automation of that compliance, how you can take rules and apply them against your requirements and test them in your infrastructure to identify not only non-conformance but also downstream, hopefully, a compliance against your needs. The age-old problem of out-of-date software, patching, hopefully will identify and give you some idea of how that can be also automated and made to be much easier in environments that are going from tens to hundreds to thousands of nodes, even in some of the most smallest of agencies these days, as we focus more on citizen-scale digital services rather than internally facing solutions. Chef Server provides the ability to deploy those corrections and deploy those services and those templates. We had a look at that in the last webinar, and we'll touch again briefly on that and how it's part of that delivery cycle, how it's part of that automation cycle, providing agility in going from a set of known templates that can be applied and then tested and used to comply. And then hopefully show that we can reduce significant amounts of time it takes to implement change, and the time it takes to assure, and hopefully the overall end-to-end delivery cycle. Clearly there is some conflict between the desire to comply and assure and to provide the confidence that you have actually achieved a level of fitting to policy and requirement against the drive to actually automate and create delivery at velocity. We use a couple of nice terms here. How can you reduce the drag in the delivery cycle? As we're looking more and more at a digital everything at citizen scale solutions and with the government transformation agenda, the drive and the need to deliver ever quicker solutions has seen pressure come from the business to at times skip and to reduce necessarily the compliance that's required at various stages of the cycle. And we're all aware of pragmatic and business-led decisions to get services out there to meet business and political requirements. However, on the other side, as knowledge and experience gains, we're also seeing the focus is increasing on the detail of the compliance required, and that's leading to a conflict between the need to do things at a far more agile pace to speed up the delivery, but at the same time provide ever increasing levels of assurance and compliance and confirmation of that. And the new frameworks of PSN have seen activity where people have had to confirm and revisit and assure their existing environments. So it leads us to two key questions. Can you prove at speed, while at the same time, can you reduce the time that it takes and hopefully take the barriers out of that delivery cycle? Inside HMG at the moment, there are obviously a myriad of different policies and frameworks and guides that are at use, and I'm not going to even begin to go into any much detail of these. A lot of these names and these frameworks we are familiar with in day to day, and taking those and applying those to real practical delivery, real practical solutions. Some of those may be internally focusing, some of them may be about agency data sharing, some of the external authority engagement. The Cabinet provides its overarching frameworks that gives us some best practice guides, but often doesn't actually go down into the detail. CSG has provided a range of GPGs, as they're known as, and for those of us who work with GPG 13, protected monitoring is a very good example of one that's is often open to interpretation. They remain a mixed bag in the level of detail and the level at which they're working at. ISO 27001 has become probably the de facto label and benchmark that people are working towards, but that again requires quite a large amount of interpretation and appropriate applies to any real situation. And obviously we've seen over the years a number of more practical and detailed specifications, the NSA providing its good practice guide and the locking down of Red Hat, and CSG with registry templates for Windows-based solutions have all provided a great basket of different policies, frameworks at different levels that enter a mix of hard, softer and assumed level of requirements of the compliance space. So how do we deal this within in an infrastructure that typically has often drifted from where it was originally designed, that often remains, after years, becomes increasingly undocumented? We've all seen the horror pictures of data centers, which no longer are the shining lights and beacons of when they were originally planned. And commonly we end up with configuration drift, best way of describing it, where what was originally built is at best an original design with a collection of change notes, and reality is often very, very different. And as we go through procurement cycles, we often see problems in transformation of that, of that information, that knowledge, often in unstructured and different levels of maturity in the data. And it leads us to the confidence of how, if we're going to assure an environment, an infrastructure, and that's everything from the wires all the way up to the messaging layer, then how can you prove it in an environment that is evolving, that's constantly changing, that not only are you providing service over the top, but you're trying to provide change? How do you know that you've actually achieved that level of configuration? And as the sites and solutions and targets grow, then you find the hundreds turning into thousands of nodes or virtual machines or hosts out there. How can you apply that across the whole estate? How do you know that every port 80 has been locked down, that every password has been fixed? And how can you ensure that happens all the time? Can you do it once? Maybe, as a one-off. Then how can you know that half an hour later it hasn't changed? So what we have today is possibly a way through that and to give a demonstration of that. We're going to start off with the first demonstration, and Chef's going to give us a view of, an overview of how we can use this technology to find a particular problem, and then we're going to come back and look at how we can use that and evolve that through the story of actually delivering a capability that's repeatable and scalable. I'm going to hand over to Steph. Steph, hopefully you are there.
I am indeed. Let me go ahead and screen share. Oh, it looks like it's using an old screen share. Just a moment. Okay, it looks to be loading my screen share right now. Let's see. Can anyone see my screen yet?
If you can bear with us just for a couple more seconds while Seth loads the demonstration. I think it's there now, in fact.
Oh, did it just go? Looks like it just went through. Okay. Let's try. There we go. Perfect. Can everyone see the Chef Compliance desktop? Okay, it looks as such. Okay. First, we're going to start with identifying a specific problem in your infrastructure. So this is where we'll introduce Chef Compliance. It's one of our newest products. And Chef Compliance allows you to create complex sets of rules in which you can scan your infrastructure for particular compliance, things that are out of compliance. So core pieces of Chef Compliance are the profiles. So here you see a basic set of profiles. We have a basic SSH profile, which we'll look at. The interesting thing about these profiles is not just checking one thing. These are a rich series of customizable tests that are scorable and allow you to have a notion of what is critical versus what is major and versus what is minor. We're not going to dig into the particular rules here for SSH, but you can just kind of see the complexity that you can allow. So you can also create reports from this. So these are scans that I've already run in the past. So you can see, you can scan multiple numbers of nodes. Not only that, you can scan, as you scan these multiple numbers of nodes, these can be, you can apply a different set of configuration or a different set of compliance policies against a variety of cross sections of your infrastructure, and then visualize this all very easily. So you can mouse over and see which IPs are offending, and as you scroll down, you can actually look at each individual offender and then all of the problems that are with it. Some nice dashboards. So we're going to return to the dashboard, and we're going to kick off our demo just by showing you what an actual compliance problem would look like, if you just decided, maybe your auditor or your security team decided to go scan something. So we're going to use this simple web node. We're going to scan it for a web server check. And this is just a basic, is our web server secured appropriately? We're going to scan this. These scans, as you can see, can be scheduled as well. So you can scan nightly, every hour. And these are completely external to the Chef ecosystem. This can just reach into a node with SSH or WinRM. As you see, we've reached out to this node. We have one absolutely critical issue. And this critical issue is that Apache is allowing indexes, or allowing directories to be indexed, which is very bad. And in the next demo, we'll actually see how we can repair this problem easily and also do this repeatedly and at velocity. So back to you, Gary.
Thanks, Seth. So that gives us just a bit of an overview of how the Chef compliance product fits into this automation and code to comply proposition. We're going to have a look at initially just some of the challenges of how we can create that pace that we're looking at, some of the problems of doing that, and how this environment then can hopefully fix that into the next demo. So the challenge in velocity, well, we're looking at three different areas about how we manage and confirm the myriad and great level of detailed requirements that come from all the different policies and frameworks, good practice guides, and real practical experience. The second, looking more at some of the very abstract requirements that are out there, the policies that fit at a level of detail that requires interpretation, and how we might use that in an automation environment, and how we can use feedback loops to achieve that. And thirdly, how you can use this environment to very easily adapt to any changes that come along as policy becomes clearer or practical experience gets fed back. So the use of the Chef environment and how that has an impact in the ability to actually make those changes. So the first, we're looking at how we can manage the detailed requirements, and there's obviously an ever finer grain of requirements that are coming through, again from practical experience, as policymakers get more refined and more detailed as threats and risks are identified. We look at those flowing down, and we see a change. And obviously that creates a problem, because as those changes flow down, we have the inability to often the inability to reapply easily those changes across the estate. So those detailed requirements may cover a whole range of different facets of a solution, but obviously restrictions to data, how it can be shared between systems, how it can be shared across with other partners, geographical boundaries, and where it might need to be remain encrypted. And as those number of requirements increase, becoming to check for those manually becomes completely overwhelming. If there's 10 systems, it might be easy. If there's 100 systems, then that's a particular point exercise. If it comes to 1,000, then it almost becomes unpractical to be able to do that. And so it becomes very quickly the ability to change at speed gets slowed down by just pure the scale as the IT environment evolves and our solutions evolve. Abstract requirements is probably the bit that often becomes the hardest to control and manage in every solution delivery. Always open to interpretation. A supplier will often have a very different view from an accreditor. There's often practical experience that becomes in the way. There are real changes and threats that either party may not be aware of. Obviously, usually comes from the top down rather than the supplier upwards. And the supplier is looking to provide a set of services and a timeline against a solution, but the accreditor is looking to ensure that the risks and RMADs have been appropriately designed and implemented to meet the threats that they pose. So we have a process of interpretation that often is mismatched between the end goal and the starting point. And to enable us to achieve the compliance of velocity, we're looking at how can we create some control in this. And we look at the Chef pipeline as the ability to take requirements and provide a feedback loop, and that's what hopefully will come and demonstrate a little later, is how you can use the Chef delivery cycle with the compliance to provide that continuous loop of how nodes and services are accepting patches and changes, how you can deploy them at scale, and how you confirm that they are being applied, again, providing you with the confidence. So as pragmatism gets pulled in, as policies change, as experiences get pulled, the service and capability is able to evolve through that journey. And finally, just the ability to adapt to constant changing requirements. Requirements in just about every service out there, while even a lot of projects are still based on in government are still based on a waterfall approach. We still have the evolution of requirements that are coming through change, and as infrastructure is no different than any part of that service delivery, and having a solution delivery capability that can take control and can adapt to those changing requirements enables you to achieve that delivery and velocity that you're looking to do. Put some control and the ability to put some confidence back into not just the compliance, but also the timescales and the resources required to do it. Usual sort of agile techniques that you would expect, stepwise time box risk managed approach, where through the use of DevOps and infrastructure as a code, you can then use those standard software delivery cycles to deliver in a controlled way at a changing environment with increasing levels of compliance at each stage. Over and above, of course, the alternative is stay in the current world, which is often a manual audit done once at various key stages along the way, usually at great expense, with a startup cost and a shutdown and the level of activity afterwards. And again, with many of us, I'm sure, have experienced the outputs from a penetration test, which provides these reams and reams and reams of changes that a year later often has not changed dramatically when it's retested. So how do we reconcile that requirement to achieve the compliance and the velocity? User testing and software development out there has accepted and has evolved with agile techniques to provide that confidence. And using infrastructure as a code, there's actually no reason why you can't take those same agile techniques. You've heard of terms like scrums and extreme and DSDM, these mechanisms that provide risk control in solution delivery, and apply those to infrastructure and compliance. Compliance then doesn't become a detour, it doesn't become an adjunct at the end, it doesn't become something that's written up front and is delivered after the go live under great political pressure, but actually becomes part of that pipeline. And what we will show, hopefully, is that Chef Compliance, in a secure, pre-accredited platform like Skyscape, can achieve that compliance velocity using that constant agile technique. So I'm going to just quickly go through the, next slide. There we go. So I'm going to go through the solution, how we think you can use this Chef Compliance solution to achieve that agility, and how it breaks down together to produce some confidence and some risk control. So the Chef, the compliance challenge we've already identified, how can you prove it across all the access and processes and workflows. We've got this term technical debt. Well, another term for it might be that complete void between what it was and how it is now. That often is lost in translation. And back to the auditability, which can drag on the ability to actually deliver. The velocity challenge, managing those requirements, as we've already discussed. What I think, where we think the solution comes from, is the ability to, and I will shoot myself by saying this isn't rocket science. These are fairly standard, proven techniques that we understand. The ability to analyze the environment, analyze and determine what is required, specify it in something that is common and shareable between various teams, different stakeholders in the compliance cycle, test it in your environment, and then confirm that it's done. I'm just going to break those down into those 4 steps. The compliance, the analysis section, well, this is standard requirements capturing, using a desired state to understand your requirement in something that is easily shareable. And with that, you're able then to provide the influence into some of the decisions of the solution will need. And those decisions will influence the way the outcome occurs. So they do need to come in usually at the beginning of the direction of travel. That's all part of our automation framework, which through the use of the delivery tooling, through the chef delivery tooling, gives you the ability to not only enforce, it provides a self-healing, but then the iterative process that feeds back and gives us the ability to do this at scale and velocity. The ability to specify your compliance requirements in using something akin to infrastructure as code gives you not just only the ability to be unambiguous, but also to share it between different stakeholders in that team. So Seth is going to give us a bit more of a demonstration in a minute about how that works, but I'm just going to give you just a couple of little snippets, and this is the simple descriptive language that we use with the Chef Compliance tool. And you can see in front of you at the moment, it's a very simple means of describing how you would expect the end result to be. In this case, we would expect Apache to be running on port 443, not on port 80, and they'll obviously be running securely. And using something as simple as that is in a language that is easily understandable by all stakeholders, enables the solution delivery, the supplier, or the internal team to actually ensure that they not only are they achieving an outcome that fits that, but then through the whole delivery cycle, possibly through an extreme or an agile approach, that is being applied at each stage and is being iterated. Just one other very simple little example here of Telnet is a good example. The NSA suggests that you don't have Telnet installed. It's a very, very weak package, and this is obviously a very simple rule that we can test for, and Seth will be showing us how we can apply similar rules to this later on. So using this common language, you're able then to codify your infrastructure and your compliance to achieve that repeatability. The ability to then test, well, just waiting for the slides to catch up. There we go. Well, there's an old phrase, of course, an untested compliance is an illusion, and that goes, of course, without really saying. Test-driven development is not a new topic, not a new concept. Again, in software development, it has been the basis for a lot of agile software delivery, and using infrastructure as a code, you can apply those same rules and that same process to your infrastructure delivery. So typically, to date, my experience, and I think hopefully shared by a lot of you, is that infrastructure is often delivered in a repeatable, infrastructure is often delivered in a waterfall type approach, and while software development might be done in an agile approach. The end result being that the infrastructure is built and designed usually up front and delivered once. Software is done usually in a different way, where the software is often written as a series of test modules, and as the tests are completed, that confirms the delivery of functionality at each stage. With infrastructure as a code, there is no reason why you cannot take that very tried and tested approach and apply it to the compliance and infrastructure delivery. Enables you to take control of the situation, enables you to understand and see the compliance level of maturity evolve through the delivery cycle. It doesn't become a one test at the end, it becomes a constant delivery, a constant update in the testing cycle that as you go on. And finally, the test cycle. Well, you may find that during the previous test cycle, the certify cycle, I should say certify at the top of that slide, actually you may be already happy with that, and this stage is possibly optional because you're seeing constantly the things tested. However, you may want the formal record that you actually have achieved that level of maturity in your compliance, and the process enables you to do that, again through the automation. And it then enables you, from the compliance officer point of view, from going from being an interested observer of the development process to actually being actively involved and a contributor to that delivery velocity, and hence you go from being a once at the beginning, once at the end type engagement to a much more integrated as part of the overall delivery approach. I'm just going to, before we go into the next demonstration, I'm going to just have a quick look at, as we've identified, that velocity and that change actually then looks at how the role of the compliance officer changes. And you end up going from before where possibly backward looking, we're looking at something that retrospectively is looking at how rules are broken, that you're looking at more longer term planning, at point engagements, to a much more proactive, critical part, quality assurance role that is actually part of that enterprise's transformation and enables you to be part of the throughput throughout the whole process. So it's quite a radical change from being involved at set gates to possibly being involved at and ensuring the level of maturity, and hence that control comes in through the use of an iterative method. So we're going to go and have a look at how this all comes together into an end-to-end example, and just be a little bit more practical than what we've the theory that we've gone so far. Patch management, as we know, is one of those bugbears that always causes problems in legacy environments and in supplier transformations and even in a lot of live operations, and experience across governments has often caught people out as one of the problems. Especially if it's manually driven, how do you know it's applied? What is the current patch level? How are you going to reapply the patch with confidence that, first of all, that it will apply, and secondly, that it won't break? The chef delivery pipeline gives us the ability to, with some confidence, go through the various staging environments, go from test into pre-live into live, using a process with ever-increasing confidence that not only is the patch being applied, but also that the solution is not breaking, and that the compliance is remaining. How do we achieve that with velocity? Just to give us some view of the various parts that we're going to show, and I've set it, we'll give it a bit more detail. The Chef Compliance tool helps you scan your nodes. So these are the components of that Chef solution. We have the ability to create and test that code. We use Chef Delivery to provide the process through a pipeline into the infrastructure to the different infrastructure environments. And then Chef Server is used then to deploy those out to the various nodes. So without further ado, I'm going to hopefully hand back to Seth. Seth, hopefully you can take us into, show us how Chef Compliance at work can actually help us solve a real problem.
Thanks, Gary. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And it looks like we're just where we need to be. So from our last example, we had just run a scan of this simple web node. We discovered that there was a problem with its Apache configuration that made it insecure. Now, compliance is very useful in that it allows us to identify these problems kind of from an ad hoc point of view, and your security groups or your auditing folks could use this. Which is really great, but what we want to do is maintain this at compliance, maintain this compliance at velocity. So what we're going to see is how we can do that. So what I've done is I've kind of pre-prepped the environment. So we can actually embed these tests not only as from, we have these tests that compliance and exacts upon systems remotely, but we can embed these tests as part of the configuration or the infrastructure as code itself.